for a single year is more than $75,000 per year. So here's the question, and it's relevant now. Who has more privilege, the people of Springfield or the women of Smith College? You'd think that'd be an easy question. One place is famous for burned out buildings and murders, the other has wrought iron gates and its nationally known art museum on campus. So Smith has more privilege, correct? No, not correct. The ladies of Smith are oppressed, they're victims. And do you know who's oppressing them? The kind of people who live in Springfield. Now, we learned all of this recently from a Smith student called Umu Kanote. Kanote is an exotic name, but she has a resume that can only come from the most established kind of background. Kanote is from New York. She went to boarding school in Connecticut at a place called Westminster. Then she headed to Smith. The school she attended charged more than the average American makes in a year. That sounds like the definition of privilege, doesn't it? But not so fast. Watch this tape from July 31st, 2018. This is the moment that Umu Kanote found out that she was oppressed.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good, how are
I was
you?
wondering why you were here.
Oh, I was eating lunch. I'm working the summer program, so I was just relaxing on the
Why
couch.
did you just take a break? Huh?
Yeah.
So you're with one of the summer programs?
Yeah, I'm actually a TA. Okay.
So that's what it was.
Alright.
You just from the doorway, you know what lunch is over with, so you're probably.
Yeah, it's okay. It's just like kind of stuff like this happens way too often where people just feel like threatened.
So that's not a very interesting piece of tape, actually. Everyone's polite. Seems like some kind of misunderstanding. Nothing really happens. But later that night, Kanote posted a message to Facebook assessing what had happened. What you just saw, she said, was proof of vicious racial discrimination. Quote, "All I did was be black. It's outrageous that some people question my being at Smith College and my existence overall as a woman of color." End quote. Kanote claimed that what you just saw was a racial attack, not just against her, but against all people who look like her. Then she accused a cafeteria worker, a woman called Jackie Blair, of being a racist, even though Blair was not involved in the episode. Now that story didn't make sense, none of it did. And yet institution after institution took her side over the side of an hourly worker, and they did so immediately. The ACLU claimed that Kanote had been singled out for, quote, eating while black. The media came to the same conclusion. A few days after that tape was shot, Kanote appeared on Good Morning America on ABC to explain that she doesn't feel safe at Smith anymore, even in its art gallery or botanical garden.
This young lady calls the entire situation outrageous, and she's sharing her story so that no other woman of color goes through what she went through.
I'm just so upset.
This is Umu Kanute. She's a sophomore at the college, working as a teacher's assistant and residential advisor over the summer. She was confronted by campus police officers.
I see the cop walk in with a Smith employee whom I've never seen before. And the man asked me, we were wondering why you're here.
Kanute, still emotional over it all, says she was very nervous and overwhelmed after the incident.
It just still upsets me to just talk about it because I don't even feel safe on my own campus and I'm away from home. I'm the first in my family to go to college.
Well, in response to this, the president of Smith College, Kathleen McCartney, did not wait for an investigation to find out exactly what had happened. No, she moved against the person who made less immediately. She suspended the janitor the first day. Then she launched white accountability seminars to immediately re-educate and browbeat all white employees at Smith. But even as she singled out her colleagues on the basis of their skin color, McCartney declared in a statement that singling people out because of their skin color is wrong. And then she concluded, with no evidence whatsoever, that that is exactly what you saw in that tape. Quote, "This painful incident reminds us of the ongoing legacy of racism and bias in which people of color are targeted while simply going about the business of their ordinary lives." But it didn't stop there. What happened next is documented at length in a recent piece in the New York Times. Here's a short version. Jackie Blair and the other employees who were falsely accused of racism by the school had their lives completely upended. Kanute posted Blair's name, her photograph, her email address on social media, and then called her a, quote, racist. Kanute also published the name and photograph of a janitor who was not even involved in the episode. Then people showed up at Blair's home, threatening her, putting threatening letters in her mailbox. In the end, an investigation found no evidence of racism in this incident, but Smith effectively ignored the investigation and its results. Kathleen McCarthy, the president of the school, announced, quote, "It is impossible to rule out the potential role of implicit racial bias." In other words, the janitor, the cafeteria worker, the security guard can't prove they're not racist. They probably are, implicitly. Meanwhile, Kathleen McCarthy issued no public apology of any kind to the employees she had just slandered or suspended. Neither did Canute or the ACLU apologize. They claimed that workers targeted Canute for her skin color, and they kept claiming that. Consider this remarkable statement from a man called Rashawn Hall. He's both the racial justice director for the ACLU of Massachusetts and Canute's lawyer. Quote, "It's troubling that people are more offended by being called racist than by the actual racism in our society. Allegations of being racist, even getting direct mailers in their mailbox, is not on par with the consequences of actual racism." In other words, if you're falsely accused of racism and you don't like it, that's evidence you're racist, especially if you're a janitor. You could not find a more perfect distillation of the moment we are living through right now. Here we have, in Canute, one of the most privileged people on planet Earth telling us that she's being oppressed by her servants. And yet, rather than getting laughed out of the room or sent for a psych evaluation, all the other privileged people nod in vigorous agreement with her and start punishing the staff. We're going to look back at moments like this one in shame. The question is, why didn't anyone speak up while it was happening? At Smith, at least one woman did. Her name is Jody Shaw. She went to Smith. She worked there as a librarian. She loved the school. Smith planned to stay, but when woke politics became a racial caste system, a system in which students and teachers were favored or punished because of the way they look, she opted out. In November, she came on the show.
Well, my story really begins with July 31st, 2018, when a black student accused a white staff member of racially motivated behavior. And the college conducted a very thorough investigation of this incident and concluded that there was no evidence of racial bias. But from the day this accusation was leveled and moving forward, the college did everything in its power to support this narrative that something horribly racist had happened on that day. And not only that, that racism is a very widespread and pervasive problem on the campus.
Jody Shaw has left Smith. Tracy Putnam Culver worked at Smith for quite some time. She has also left. We're happy to have her on tonight. Tracy, we're grateful to have you tonight. You spent many years working at Smith. Were you surprised to see wage earners, people at the lowest end of the wage scale at Smith, denounced as racists by a student, privileged by definition, and her word be taken as truth before the investigation even concluded? What did you make of that as you watched it?
I thought it was irrational. I didn't understand why there wasn't a meeting held, at the very most, with the staffers that were accused, with the college and with the student, and everything could have been straightened out immediately. I still to this day do not understand why the president and Amy Hunter from the Office of Equity and Inclusion decided to immediately assume guilt on the side of staff.
Yes. What's so distressing about this story is that it seems like the people accused were really hurt by it. Tell us about them, since you worked there.
Oh gosh, well, I worked there for 35 years, and the staff member that was accused of making the phone call had been there for over 30 years and was a residential custodian who saw the students every day. And McCartney seemed to assume that the reason he said Umu was out of place was because she was black. But in actuality, it was because she was somewhere she shouldn't have been. She was in a closed house. He was put on administrative leave for 3 months, mandatory leave. The dining assistant, who wasn't even involved in the incident, whose face appeared on Facebook with Umu's posting, she still hasn't recovered. She has a autoimmune disease that's exacerbated by stress. She ended up in the hospital. The campus policeman, who essentially was the poster boy for his department for 30 years, he was fired in 2019 for an undisclosed reason that was supposedly not connected. And the other custodian that was misidentified was so traumatized by threats that he never came back to Smith. So it's been a really hard road for those folks, and it still amazes me that the college allowed a 19-year-old to wreak havoc on their lives.
Well, it's the whole story is stunning. And what about the young woman who did wreak that havoc, the person of privilege who hurt the custodian and the campus police officer? What happened to her? Was she punished in any way that you know of by the school for making a false allegation?
Of course not. No, she wasn't. She was apologized to profusely. And even after the 60-plus page report came out from the college's own investigators that there was no racial bias, the staff members themselves received no apology.
It just tells you everything. And you've explained it so crisply, and I appreciate that. Tracy Putnam Culver, thank you.
Thank you.
Jason Hill,
This he's talking about is my woke town. I've lived in it for 4 years. This does not surprise me in the least. I have been harassed, stuff stolen from my yard, called things, physically threatened, smeared in my newspaper because I won't give in to the woke mindset in this town. I've been dealing with this crap, and I'm just a person who's lived here for 5 years. I'm sure this crap is going on in other towns too. I don't put it in my town. You shouldn't put it up in your town. If you see it in your town, through your college or anywhere else, when somebody calls you out or tries to cancel you over something that is not true, double down on the thing that they lie about. Triple down. Do it over and over if you have to. Somebody stole a sign out of my yard and called me a racist white supremacist because I had a picture of a Trump supporter hugging a Black Lives Matter person. They stole it. Cops had to patrol my street. So many things have happened to me in this town. You know what I did? I bought 100 of the signs, and I gave them out. But eventually I had to not give them out because people, I felt like their life was in jeopardy if they put a sign in their front yard of two people hugging. That's how wokely effed up my town is by these what I call the vocal minority. Because most of the people in this town are not that way. But this is a minority that runs the town. I've been involved in it a long time. After that, I said, you know what? I'm going to open a place called One Love where everybody can come in, and it says right on the door, anybody welcome, no matter your politics or anything else. And I opened up in the middle of the pandemic, and I will continue to be here. I will double down and triple down in the wokeness of this town, this tribalism, where they demonize anybody that doesn't bow to their mentality. Not doing it. Sorry.